we have to contend with. And I see this news report where Biden is so lashing out at media coverage that any president has ever gotten, compared how they treated Trump to how they treat Biden. It's night and day. And so he's trying to make excuses, and I'm just thinking to myself, you know, what has he done since he came into office? He immediately waged war against American energy production. You see record gas prices in the United States? Well, that's a big reason why, because of his policies. You look at what they did in terms of fiscal and monetary, printing and borrowing trillions and trillions of dollars. What did you get for that? The most sustained inflation this country has seen in over 40 years. He advocated for and imposed mandates and restrictions related to COVID, including having people fired from their job based on getting a COVID jab or not. That has had a hugely negative impact on the economy, and he failed to take leadership and take decisive action to alleviate the supply chain crisis that we've seen really beguiling not only this country but places around the world. And so he has created the circumstances that have led to this resounding disapproval of what he has done. He would have been better off, and we would be better off, if he had simply got into office and did nothing than what he has done so far. And so as we're looking to do what we can to protect Florida, and I'm happy to be here, joined here today with the leadership of the Florida House and Senate, outgoing Speaker Chris Sprowls, outgoing Senate President Wilton Simpson. Then we have the incoming President of the Florida Senate, Kathleen Passidomo. We also have the outgoing Appropriations Chairman, Kelly Stargell from Polk County, who did a great job with the budget, and new Commissioner of Education, Manny Diaz from down in Hialeah is here. And so what we really had to do was, yes, if you look at over the last couple years, we kept Florida open. We protected people's rights. We saved countless numbers of jobs and people's businesses and made sure kids had the opportunity to be in school in person. And all of that meant we have outpaced the nation on virtually every indicator. Better job growth, better business formation, better economic growth, record-breaking tourism in 2021. And in the most recent quarter, Florida has represented 45% of all foreign tourism has come to the state of Florida of the United States. That's a massive share. We currently now have, by far, the largest budget surplus in the history of the state of Florida, and our revenue comes in strong all the time. And if you look also in terms of education, these lockdown states that, the unions lock these kids out of school, they didn't want them in class, and the result has been huge learning losses, unprecedented learning losses. But even Harvard admitted Florida, we've seen no widening of any achievement gaps between rich, poor, black, white, because we actually had kids in school. And so that's going to have a huge impact, negative in these other states, and we will have mitigated a lot of the damage by having it here in Florida. And you can't put a price tag on that. You can't put a price tag on opportunity for kids and making sure parents have the ability. And, of course, separate from the budget, we believe that when parents send their kids to school, it's for education, not for indoctrination. And we're going to hold that line in Florida. But we're having to do all this against this ominous backdrop of what's happening in Washington. And he complains, Biden does, about everybody else. He never takes responsibility for himself. But what I would say is, you want to know why your approval ratings are in the toilet? Try looking in the mirror for once. So what we're doing in the budget is making sure that we're meeting the obligations, making sure we're funding key priorities, but also protecting the state against what very well may be a Biden-induced recession. And one of the reasons we've been so insistent on maintaining significant reserves and budget surplus is we don't know what's going to happen in the intervening months and years. And you see the inflation. I can tell you energy is not slowing down. You absolutely could have oil at $150 or even more dollars per barrel relatively soon. I think we're going to end up having a national average for unleaded of $5 a gallon very soon. And I don't think we're going to get much under that throughout most of the summer. And we just started basically driving season with Memorial Day, and it's gone up dramatically. He says there's nothing he can do about inflation. You know what? You could unleash American energy production. The gas is driving the inflation more than anything. So what we are doing in the budget is making sure we're responsible. I will, in this budget, you know, the governor, unlike the president, you can line item veto individual appropriations items. And so they do a budget. If there's a project that you think is pork barrel spending, you can veto it. So you can sign the whole budget and then veto out a number of different items. And so we exercise that power very robustly in this budget, not because the legislature is necessarily putting pork. There was some pork, but I think it was just because, you know, we don't want to be in a situation where we're repeating the mistakes of Washington by overspending. The fact that they cranked up the printing presses and have borrowed and spent and printed all this has left us in the mess that we're in now. So we want to make sure we're responsible. So the top line number for our budget that I'll sign is $109.9 billion. Now, what does that mean? Is that a lot? Is that reasonable? Well, the state closest to us in population is New York State. We have 3 million more people than New York State, and their budget's over twice as large as the state of Florida's budget. And so we're very responsible. Our services are better, our roads are better, our schools are better. And to get at that number, I have exercised my line item veto authority for, by far, the largest number and amount of line item vetoes in the history of this state. I broke my own record. I set the record in 2020 with $1 billion. I broke that with $1.5 billion last year. This year, we've more than doubled it, $3.1 billion in line item vetoes, making sure that we're protecting your money. They may not be clapping about that, but that's just the way it goes. And so we did record line item veto to make sure that this is a budget. You know, if you look at last year to this year, if you account for population growth and you account for the inflation, we're doing a lot, but we're really doing it in ways, I think, that are manageable and that protects Florida for the long haul. What did we also do? This budget represents the largest tax relief in the history of the state of Florida, $1.3 billion. A number of holidays for different, you know, we don't have income tax, thankfully, and as long as I'm governor, we never will. But, you know, we have sales tax, so we do sales tax holidays. So we're doing holidays for disaster preparedness. You guys get it. I mean, I think we still have some time for that. You see the disturbance in the Gulf now that's going to head our way. And so we should just anticipate. We're going to deal with storms. We have back to school sales tax relief. No tax for a year on diapers or baby clothing, which as a father of a 2-year-old, my wife and I really appreciate. We need it. My wife just asked me, why didn't you do that 3 years ago when we had all our kids in diapers? Well, you live and you learn on that. We also do $200 million in fuel tax holiday. I mean, it's going up so much, I hope people can feel it, you know, when it goes in. But, you know, we have 25 cents a gallon that we're providing a holiday for up to $200 million. So we're doing a lot, and we will be doing more in the future, 100%. But we're happy with that. We're also have something, so when we talk about surplus, our reserves are a number of things. Some of it's just extra revenue. Some of it is a specific rainy day fund. And so with this budget, this is the largest rainy day fund that the state has ever had in history by far. I don't think before I was governor, we usually would keep about $1 billion, $1.5 billion in the rainy day fund, which is honestly prudent, and that's not like it's bad. This budget we're signing, we're going to have over $3 billion in the rainy day fund alone. So it's huge. And what we see is they estimate revenue coming into the state, and in May, we're between $600 and $700 million into the state above what they estimated. And that's been happening month after month. And again, we'll see. The Fed is raising rates. You've got a lot of problems with Washington, how that's going to impact the economy overall. We're not going to be immune to it, but I think that we're in a great position to mitigate that and mitigate the effect for Floridians. And I think we're really, really happy about that. And so in terms of fiscal standing, I think I can sit here with the legislature and say, this state has never been in a better fiscal position than we are right now. And that's just a result of good policy. What does that mean in terms of meeting priorities? You see the big surplus, you see the tax cuts, you see the record number of line item vetoes, you see a budget that is much more fiscally responsible than some of our competing states, and yet even with all of that, this budget has the highest amount of per student funding for K through 12 schools in the history of the state of Florida. We have the largest increase in teacher compensation in the history of the state of Florida. We are fully funding the historic transition from the FSA testing into a progress monitoring system, which is going to be more responsive to the needs of teachers, students, and parents. And so that will go into effect in the upcoming school year on a trial basis, and then that will be what's determined for school grades in the following year for that. And we also have another record, $579 million for workforce and vocational and technical education throughout the state of Florida. I mean, you make signing bonuses for truck drivers, $15,000 they'll give you to start. Walmart is $110,000 for truck drivers for starting. You look at HVAC, welding, all these other things, no debt. You go in and you're making a really good living. And we just want people to know that there are multiple paths in life that you can take. We're very excited that in our budget, for higher education, we fully funded Bright Future scholarships for great high school students. And you do know, because of what they've done recently, grandparents in Florida can claim in-state tuition for their kids if they have, they have to have a certain amount, performance. High performing. So any of you that have high performing grandkids in some of these other places, we don't let them raise tuition in Florida. So you can go and you literally don't have to go in debt at all if you don't want to. And you can graduate in 4 years and end up debt free and doing well if you get that in-state tuition. And so that's a great perk, I think, and I think it's very appropriate for a lot of our senior citizens to be able to continue to help their families. But and our university system is now ranked #1 in the country by U.S. News and World Report for 5 years in a row. And I was actually in the Villages, we're trying to make it even better. We are, okay. Yeah. No, it's people run against the wall and things like that happen. We're trying to make it even better. I signed legislation here in the Villages a couple months ago, starting this year, all tenured professors undergo review every 5 years. And so these are important for accountability. So we're proud of that, but we also just have to acknowledge a lot of higher education in our country over the last many decades has not been worth the bills that parents have paid. It has not been worth the amount of excruciating debt that so many of these kids have undertaken. You know, Biden just wants to have the taxpayers pick up the debt, and so if you're a plumber or a bartender or something, you should have to pay the debt, he thinks, of somebody that got a PhD in gender studies. We oppose that. That is not right, and you shouldn't do that. But at the same time, look, I would be in favor of putting these colleges on the hook for this debt, because they have facilitated this, they have benefited this, they've grown their budgets for administration and facilities tremendously, and they want students to take 6 years to get a degree, because that just means more loan money for them. So let's make them have to back this, and then you'd be able to get some relief where they would be the ones responsible. But it shouldn't even have to come to that. You should be able to provide students the options to go the best pathways available, and a 4-year brick and ivy university is not the best for everybody. There's other pathways that are very lucrative for people, and you shouldn't be viewed as less because you're going on a different pathway than if you're going to a traditional university. And so I think in Florida, we've worked so hard on workforce, we've really expanded opportunities, and it helps our economy because more people want to invest in Florida and create things in Florida because they know we're serious about workforce education. So we're going to continue to do that, and I think this budget is proof positive of that. We also, in this budget, continue our longstanding commitment since I've been governor, working with the legislature to support safe and secure learning environments at our K through 12 schools. This has almost $400 million for school safety and for mental health initiatives for K through 12 schools. So that's a huge deal. We're doing more than has ever been done to help families served by the child welfare system. We're helping Floridians with disabilities, and we're also helping our veterans. This budget has more than $1 billion additional dollars going to rate increases per providers that are serving vulnerable Floridians, including people with disabilities. And if you think about it, you can have these programs, but if you don't have people that can go deliver the services, and fact of the matter is there were people that could make more working at Wawa than they could doing to service some of our needy. And so the legislature put a huge commitment, a huge increase there, and that is going to make a difference. You're going to have more people that are going to be on the job, and you're going to be able to serve our elderly and our folks with disabilities much more effectively than we could. We've also done $361 million for foster care, adoption, and the child welfare system. We've put more money to increase the attractiveness of adoption and being a foster parent than has ever been done in Florida history. I mean, our view is everybody counts, and everybody should have a right and an opportunity to do very well in life, regardless of their initial circumstances. And so you can say that, but here we're actually following through with a great commitment. And one of the things I'm really proud of and have spearheaded since I've been governor in terms of health is we've got record funding for Alzheimer's disease initiative and the community care for our elderly program through the Department of Elderly Affairs. And we're going to have over 2,000 additional seniors receive services, be able to stay comfortably in their homes as a result of this. We also have money going to Alzheimer's research, and we're going to be doing a big announcement on some of the additional things we're doing in that regard very, very soon, so stay tuned. But I really think that the solution for Alzheimer's is going to run through the state of Florida, and I think we're going to get there. I think it's going to be it's a difficult issue to deal with for families that have had to do it. Obviously, we want to provide support for that, but we'd like to get to a place where we can mitigate the disease itself. And so we've got some promising technologies, and we're going to be announcing some of the partnerships that we have there. We have almost $100 million to combat the opioid epidemic in the state of Florida, and this has been a huge thing. If you look now in our country, the #1 cause of death for people 18 to 45 is fentanyl overdose, and it's pouring across the southern border. Obviously, you still have things with like prescription opioids and things like that, but mostly this is illicit fentanyl made in China, yes, but brought across that porous and undefended southern border, and they're coming over in droves with no end in sight. Another unfortunate failure of the Biden administration. Very early on, he opened the border, and the results have been catastrophic for what he's done. So we're doing what we can here in the state of Florida, and we're proud to be able to do it. We're also proud to be a law and order state. And if you think back, it was about 2 years ago where we saw some of the worst rioting in the history of our country. You didn't see that in Florida, though, because we would not allow that. And we had law enforcement ready. We had law enforcement ready, National Guard ready, and we made it was not ambiguous with us. We were going to support the folks who were protecting our communities, and that's just the way it's been. The last budget, this current fiscal year ending June 30th, we did $1,000 bonuses for every police, firefighter, and EMT in the entire state of Florida. I asked the legislature to do it again, and so this budget will include, for the second straight year, $1,000 bonuses for all sworn law enforcement, fire, and EMTs. And we actually have enough money in there to cover the taxes that they owe. You know, you give them money and Biden taxes them for these bonus payments, and so we gave enough money so that tax liability can be taken care of, and we're proud to have done that. But what we also noticed and it wasn't just the last 2 years, but I think it came to a boiling point 2 years ago, was just how poorly some of the law enforcement are treated throughout the country. And, you know, like there's this issue in Texas, we hold them accountable. I mean, like we support the blue, but one of the first things I did when I became governor, I removed the sheriff of Broward County because they didn't support the Parkland kids like they should have. So So we have high standards, and we expect people to wear the uniform to live up to those high standards. But I'm happy to report in Florida they do that. And when they don't, like we saw 2 years ago or 3 years ago when I came in, you know, we hold them accountable, and we'll continue to do that. But I think the morale is so low because good, hardworking, brave people have been treated so poorly by these mayors and these states across the country that you've never had morale lower, you've never had less support for them, and a lot of them just want to get out of these places, and they want a place where they're appreciated. So we've sent the message, you know, this is a great place to be for law enforcement, and we're going to do that by facilitating people who want to go into the profession from Florida who've never been in, but also people that are transferring from Chicago or Seattle or Minneapolis. And so this budget includes the money for a bill I signed a couple months ago. All these new recruits, in-state, out-of-state, you come here and you're qualified, you get a $5,000 signing bonus. I'll tell you, they're lining up right now. Massive numbers of applications are coming in, and why not? We also understood that, yes, it's important to recruit new people. It's also important to retain the people that we do have. And so this budget provides, again, another record compensation increases for state corrections and law enforcement positions, and the average increase is going to be about a 15% increase in compensation. That is even better than Bidenflation. Thanks to the leadership of Speaker Sprowls, this budget makes more than $334 million of investment to protect the state against cyber security attacks. And this will help our intelligence modernization and resiliency against what is going to increasingly be a threat to governments at all levels as well as the private sector. We also have, we've done a lot with fighting Biden on the border. We're currently suing him in the Panhandle, and we're winning the case, about catch and release. He shouldn't be able to release people. When I became governor, since Trump was president, he wanted to deal with this. So the thing we need to do in Florida, and I signed the law to do it, is we banned sanctuary cities in the state of Florida. We basically said there's no law-free zones, and especially when you have these folks who are committing criminal offenses, it needs to be automatic that the feds pick them up and then they send them back to their home country. So when Trump was president, I was governor, some people are in our prison system who are illegal, who have like 20-year sentences, 10-year sentences. Some of them committed really bad crimes. Well, when they finish their sentence, we can't legally hold them anymore. We'd let ICE know, they'd pick them up, and then they'd send them back. And that's the way it should be. Biden will release a lot of these people who are coming out even out of our prison system. And so, that's just wrong. So we're suing on catch and release. I'm going to sign a bill next week or within the next week or two that we're penalizing these contractors who are dumping illegal aliens into the state of Florida, and they're going to face ramifications for doing that. But I did get $12 million in this budget, which we'll get after I sign it, $12 million so that if Biden is busing people, illegals from the border to Florida, we have money to reroute to Delaware and all these other places, and that's what we're going to do. We also understand how important Florida's National Guard is. When we have storms, when we have other issues, they were very supportive, for example, during COVID when we were distributing supplies and testing and medications and all the things that we did, and we were happy to do and saved a lot of lives in the process. But we have one of the lowest guardsmen to citizen ratios in the country. We've wanted to expand the National Guard for a long time, but we've not gotten the federal approval that we need to do it. And so I'm looking at it saying we need to take action here. But I also saw what they're trying to do to these National Guardsmen by kicking them out based on the COVID vax. And so we did a special session, protect everyone in Florida to be able to opt out of any of those mandates. But, push may come to shove when it comes to the military. And so I was like, if we had our own state guard that didn't report to the feds and was not obligated to follow those mandates in the first place, then these people wouldn't even have to worry about getting kicked out. The military in our country is kicking out people who have served honorably and with distinction based on this vax. And most of the people they're kicking out have already had COVID and recovered from COVID and have immunity through prior infection. And so and they say they need to do it for good order and discipline. No, you're destroying good order and discipline when you kick out good, honorable people. But that's what they're doing. And so in Florida, we think that's wrong. And so our state guard will report to the governor, and we will not be mobilized by Washington, and they cannot impose mandates on our service members who are in the State Guard. And so the legislature funded this. We're going to have probably 400 new positions. So, we're looking for some good folks. So sign up. It's going to be, I think there's a lot of people that are interested in it, but that's really important. And, if you do have a storm, if you do have certain situations, to be able to have more personnel as a force multiplier is going to make a huge, huge difference. We also, following along what we did legislatively, we did the last 2 years the strongest election integrity anywhere in the country. If you look at Over the last 2 years, we have banned ballot harvesting in the state of Florida. It's now a third-degree felony to ballot harvest. We make sure for absentee ballot requests that also is accompanied by a requirement to have voter ID. We make sure that these drop boxes are not allowed to just be put in the community in these random places. You get an absentee ballot, you can put it in the mail. If you want to deliver it in person, you can take it to a voting site. But we're not going to let these things float around in the ether. They're done in the state of Florida. And maybe the most important, we banned Zuckerbucks in the state of Florida. So that's done. And so in order to make sure all that runs well, we thought it was important to make sure that those laws are honored and enforced. And so the legislature has funded the creation of the first ever election integrity unit in state government. That's sole responsibility will be to ensure that the election laws are followed. Make sure you hold people ballot harvesting accountable if they do it. Make sure that the voter rolls get cleaned every year as a matter of course. So all of that is now part of that, and we have the funding to be able to bring that into fruition. So we're proud of that, and we thank the legislature for stepping up for doing that as well. We also, when I became governor, made a commitment that Florida is a unique state, that our natural environment and water resources are second to none. But we had to do more to make sure that we were protecting those and making sure we had clean water for people that want to fish and boat and do all the things that people want to do when they come to the state of Florida. So we set an ambitious agenda and an ambitious goal that we would increase funding over the 4 years of my term by $1 billion compared to the previous 4 years for Everglades restoration, water resources, water quality, all the things that make Florida great. And we didn't do the billion, we did much more than that. And so our goal was $2.5 billion over these 4 years. With this budget, we will have done $3.3 billion. That's more than twice of the 4 years before I became governor. And so we have things like projects that are going to make a huge difference for our Everglades and key areas. We have money to research things like blue-green algae and red tide. We have prospects for mitigation, which honestly, they actually work. You just got to figure out what side effects that may have. So we've got labs working on it. Really, really excited. People really weren't paying attention to this as much before I became governor, and now it's been all systems go. So this budget is probably the best budget for conservation and water quality in the history of the state of Florida. So thank you for doing that. And another record, our state transportation work program is $11.7 billion. We've never done that much in the history of the state of Florida. And if you think about it, we've always funded this work program. It's important. We've always been a growing state. You want to get ahead of that as best as you can. But, you know, the growth, like the Villages, is growing so fast. You got to do as much as you can. And so I think what we're doing here is doing our best to keep up with all the stuff going on around us. And look, I don't beg people to come to Florida. Some governors, they beg people to come to their states. Like, I'm happy with everyone we have, but it is a free country and people can come if they want to come. And the fact is, even the people that just visiting here, we have visitors in record numbers. I mean, you imagine Memorial Day weekend was packed all across the state. I mean, it was really unbelievable. So we want to make sure that the state has the infrastructure necessary to support a very dynamic economy and opportunities for people. And so this budget does that. It's got money to help people get into housing. You know, some of the folks, you know, in this community, you buy a house, whatever, but, you know, we have younger people that are working in a wide variety of occupations, firefighters, cops, teachers, all this stuff. And because the costs have gone up so much, and since Biden's come in, everything has gone up dramatically. Yes, Florida, there's high demand to live here, but the housing costs have gone up. Even the states people are leaving. I mean, that's just been the case. And so this has been a huge issue. So we just launched a Hometown Heroes program for down payment assistance for nurses, educators, firefighters, EMTs, and really people that are key to the community. And we've got a really large amount of money to help generate more affordable housing in the state of Florida. So we're happy to be able to do that, and we understand that that's something that every business I talk to, they're so happy with, like Florida. They're not happy with the federal government, but they're like, I want to hire more people. And one of the impediments to hiring more people is sometimes people can't afford to live in those areas, and so you're not going to commute an hour and a half, to a job. And so we're recognizing that in this budget. We also got huge amounts of money to be able to do targeted infrastructure and job training projects. So we have $50 million, which is the governor's job growth grant fund. So for example, Sumter County can request, actually we've done stuff in Sumter for the industrial park. So there's different things you could do. You can build a road to help facilitate commerce. We did expansion of commercial truck drivers spots in our state colleges. So really the possibilities are endless in that. So we'll make really good use of that, and that'll be really, really good. We also got $30 million for rural infrastructure fund, and that's a huge increase of what's traditionally been done. But a lot of our rural communities, I think I'm the first governor to do public events in all 67 counties. I've done that since I've been governor. And a lot of times people say, well, politically, do you need to go to a rural county? There's not a lot of people, this or that. And politically, maybe you don't, but it's the right thing to do. So we've made sure to support rural infrastructure, job opportunities, and it's really gone a long way. So I want to thank the legislature for doing that. So when you look at all this that we're going to sign into law today, this is really record-breaking across the board. However you slice it, record-breaking tax relief, record-breaking line item vetoes, record-breaking budget surplus, record-breaking education, record-breaking environment, conservation, all across the board, and I think that's a sign of good governance. I think that, as much as people like Biden always like to attack Florida, maybe he can learn a thing or two from what we're doing in Florida, because it isn't working out for him the way they're doing it. So I just want to say thanks to the leadership that's here. Senator Simpson and Sprowls will, have been able to say over these 2 years probably more significant achievements than has ever been done. I mean, my first 2 years were very good, and I think those were very good, but I mean, you compare, I think we outdid ourselves in these last 2 years. And so they should get a lot of thanks from the people of Florida for being there and helping with it. Also, Senator Stargell on the appropriations. Jay Trumbull is here, who's the House Appropriations Chairman from the Panhandle up in Panama City. I want to thank him for being a good partner for us. And then, Manny is now going to be, as Secretary of Education, implementing a lot of the great policy and the funding that we have in this year's budget. So we're prepared for what Biden throws our way. Yes, part of it's the inflation and the gas. Part of it are intentionally destructive policies, like trying to deny school lunch programs for states that don't do transgender ideology in the schools. I mean, give me a break. Totally off his rocker to be doing that. We're fighting on that. Don't worry. So we're just prepared to be able to defend the taxpayers and the hardworking people in the state of Florida. And I couldn't be prouder for doing that. So you're going to hear from some of the folks who had a role in this. So first we'll bring up the outgoing president of the Florida Senate, Wilton Simpson.
First of all, I just want to say thank you, and how about Ron DeSantis, America's governor? Exactly. So, no, I think the governor did obviously a great job of explaining the budget, and we could have not have done this in the legislature the last 2 years without great leadership. Senator Stargell is here from Polk County. She was our budget chair the last 2 years, did a tremendous job. Our president-designate, Kathleen Pasadomo, is here. Great job with her as our rules chair. And, of course, we had a great Senate. Senator Diaz, now Commissioner Diaz, Speaker Sprouse, Representative Trumbull. We all work very closely together. And just to give you, just to fill in a few things, you know, the governor didn't say, but obviously was very thorough. We're very proud of those things. Florida is the lowest per capita state in the union. I've now served 10 years. In the last 10 years, we have cut taxes by $10 billion. We have historic reserves, as the governor mentioned. When we left for COVID, I think we had $3.5 billion of reserves. Today we have well in excess of $10 billion of reserves and going up every month. Some of the things we were very proud of the last 2 years in total, we put a lot of your money into infrastructure. While COVID was hit and a lot of the lockdown states were locked down, we were building our roads. We were taking care of our water infrastructure. We know 1,500, maybe 2,000 people a day are moving here. We always say 1,000 or 1,500. I bet it's probably closer to 2,000. We know those things. So we put those historic amounts of money in our budget to make sure we were trying to get ahead of the curve. I don't know that we'll ever get ahead of the curve, but hopefully we're catching up. The historic funding we did in our K-12 system this year, over $1.5 billion, historic funding, we're very proud of that. Law enforcement, we are the best state in the union for law enforcement, and now law enforcement pay after this budget gets signed here in just a few minutes. Last thing I'll mention, this last year, 3 years ago, there was a constitutional amendment in this state done that said you're going to pay everybody $15 an hour by 2026. And of course, that was traumatic at the time. We thought, how are we going to, a lot of small businesses are going to go out of business between now and then because we can't afford to pay $15 an hour. This year, the people who take care of our most vulnerable, if you work in a school system and you make less than $15 an hour because you are a cafeteria worker or you are a bus driver or any of the other services, this year you now will get paid $15 an hour. If you take care of our most vulnerable in nursing homes, the APD and other areas that are contracted with the state, you will also make $15 an hour. And so we're very proud of that. It's been a real honor to serve these last 2 years as Senate President. Officially, it'll be over in November. I've served now 10 years in the Senate, my first elected job, and it's been nothing more gratifying to cut the taxes, roll back regulation, stimulate business, and then lead and help lead through the pandemic with this governor. It remains, Florida is now, and I believe will remain into the future, the best state to start a business, find a job, or raise a family. And thank you, Governor DeSantis, for all your leadership.
Okay, outgoing Speaker of the Florida House, Chris Sprouse.
Thank you, Governor. You guys have heard a lot of great news already today about this budget. Over the last week, we got the new estimates in for the month, for this past month. We were $838 million over estimate in the state of Florida, over $2.1 billion the last couple of months. But I believe, and I think you'll probably share this opinion, that those estimates are overestimate. This budget is as good as it is for the people of Florida for one reason and one reason only, and that is because our governor kept our state open. Think about just for a moment that one act, right? The idea of saying to our business owners, you get to go make a living. You get to bring your employees back who are worried about paying for their children's education or how they're going to provide for their retirement. Telling them that you get to send your children back to school because we care about what they're learning and how much and how fast they're learning. That was all done by this governor and this legislature, and it's impactful in this budget. You know, President Simpson, who just came up, I can tell you, you know, so often we've been conditioned to politicians who can't work together, who are dysfunctional, who don't prioritize the values that they campaigned on. That has not been the case for the Florida House and the Florida Senate. With the partnership with President Simpson and the House and senators who are here today, we've come to this historic moment and this historic opportunity. And I remember specifically Chairman Trumbull, who's our House Appropriations Chairman, at the beginning of this budget cycle, we said, what are our big goals for the budget? And we agreed there were two things. We wanted to have the largest reserves in the history of Florida and the largest tax cuts in the history of Florida, and that is in this budget. Now, I'm going to warn you, how many of you are from other states? Now, there's a decent amount. If any of us go visit our friends in the Northeast and you tell them that the budget in your state had the largest reserves and the largest tax cuts ever, they are not going to believe you. Because it's so far from what they have. But here's the other thing that I would say to you about this budget, and the governor did such a great job of going through all of it. But we're also conditioned to politicians, to governors, to legislators who prioritize the next 12 minutes instead of the next 30 years of what our children and our grandchildren's life is going to look like. Not in this budget. The governor mentioned that not only the $8.9 billion to plan for our children's future, $500 million for emergency response. We know that a hurricane will come. It's only a question of when. This governor did an amazing job during the pandemic, during the hurricanes that we've had throughout the state. That fund allows us to respond rapidly. $363 million of affordable housing. Look, one of the downsides of success, the governor mentioned, he doesn't have to invite people here to the state of Florida, they just come, right? One of the hard parts of success is paying for it, right? That means housing is an issue. It means fixing our roads and our transportation infrastructure. That's been prioritized in this budget. One thing I'm personally very proud of, and the governor did an awesome bill signing a couple weeks ago in Tampa on this, was there are $74 million in this bill. It is the largest effort by any state in America to tackle the fatherlessness epidemic that is ravaging our country. We want to make sure that parents are involved in their children's lives and that they grow up to be successful so that they can go to K-12 education. Now, if I told you that we were going to have the largest record investment in K-12 education and that this governor was going to sign a bill to protect them from being indoctrinated when they went to school, most states wouldn't believe you, but not here in the state of Florida. We did just that. While other states were throwing our law enforcement officers under the bus, this governor went to Polk County and signed a bill to prevent people from injuring our officers, to prevent riots, to prevent looting. And in this budget, we built on that success through the governor's leadership of raises for our law enforcement officers, recruiting. There was a sign January 1st in Times Square, New Year's Eve, that said, "Why are you working for the NYPD? Come to Florida." I could say that. My dad's a retired New York City cop. Part of success is we have people coming here who need health care. They need nurses and doctors to take care of them. And through this budget is the largest investment in nursing education, making sure that our nurses who always fight for us on the front lines are taken care of and provided for. You know, one thing that has been so overlooked these last few years is our education system. And I can tell you this, there is no governor who has had better education commissioners in the history of Florida than Ron DeSantis. Richard Corcoran, who some of you met, he was here a couple weeks ago when we did the higher ed bill, and now Manny Diaz, who is a fighter for our kids, is a fighter for our families. He's going to make sure that your tax dollars are spent well, that they're used to teach kids reading, writing, and math, and not to indoctrinate. He's going to be the guy who makes sure that happens. You know, before Governor DeSantis took office, Republicans so often took a back seat on the environment. Here we are. Many of us came here because, how many of you came to Florida because you went on vacation and you say, why do I live where I live? Some of you are not telling the truth. Yeah. You came here on vacation, you saw how awesome it was, and you say, why am I going back? That's how my family came here in 1983. And so many families do that, but we need to protect our waterways. We need to protect the Lake Okeechobee, our springs, our water canals, the St. Johns River. This governor has been the most pro-environmental governor in the history of Florida, which is reflected with billions and billions of dollars, making sure that our water isn't just good for us, but it's good for our children and our grandchildren.